Hey everyone, James Niggemeyer here. Thank you for tuning back into my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do a quick recap, but I'm going to really get into some of the details of my Lake Murray MLF Big 5 Pro Circuit event. That was stop number 3, so basically we're in the halfway point of the season. So I wanted to share some of the strategies, some of the rods, reels, techniques, patterns I was on, and my thoughts coming into the event, as well as some post thoughts about how I could have changed things, if I would have changed things, and so forth. First off, I want to say congratulations to Matt Becker for a great win there on Lake Murray. He exploited that blueback herring pattern, which is another thing I'd like to talk about. In some of the lakes in the south throughout the country, mainly South Carolina, Georgia, and 1 or 2 in Alabama, there is blueback herring. In most of your lakes of the country, basically there's like 4 different prey items that bass eat, and that's basically you have threadfin shad, shiners, bluegills, and crawfish. That's just basically what they eat. But with in these lakes with blueback herring, what you end up having is another prey item. And what we've noticed is, as anglers, is that if there's blueback herring in a lake, fish really go for them. I mean, largemouth bass really feed on them. So it's a definite driver on how the fish react, what they do, the seasonal patterns, and how they go about their life pursuing those bait fish. That's definitely something to take into consideration. My strategy coming into the event was I'm gonna go after those spawning fish. There's gonna be spawning fish anywhere April in the south, there's gonna be fish on beds. And so that being a strength of mine, that's something that I like to do, something I've had success on over the years. So I knew that was gonna be something that I wanted to do. But I also love to shallow power fish, and it being April, there was going to be pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn fish up there shallow, so I plan to really key on those. My day 1 of my practice kind of went like this. I went up the river because I want to do that shallow power fishing thing, and I wanted to put myself in a place, try to figure out whether those fish were actually going on up the river. So that's what I did. Found some fish that I could catch on a frog, found some fish that I could catch flipping, but I wasn't getting just a lot of bites, but I felt like the quality was up there, and I found some fish on beds up there. So there was some of that going on. Day 2 of practice, stayed in the middle portion of the lake because I figured if there was bedding fish up the lake, then there's got to be bedding fish in that clear, cooler water that doesn't warm as fast as up the river where it's stained and more shallow. So spent the rest of the day, rest of practice, because we only have 2 days of practice, so I spent the rest of practice down in the middle portion of the lake in that clear water, and found some bedding fish there as well. The 3rd day, we don't have any practice. It's a registration day. It's kind of an off day. Go over our tackle, go over our boat, get ready for the tournament. We had some high winds, some 20 to 30 mile an hour winds with a really cold night. A cold front came through. Started out first day of the tournament with the lows in the 30s, and it got up to 60, but early in the morning it was cold, long johns type stuff, at least for me. And I knew that was going to have an effect on the fish, but I didn't think it was going to run those fish off the bed. So that was my first priority, is try to go to some of these areas where I saw some bigger fish and try to catch them on beds. And so that's what I did. Spent the first half of the day of day 1 of the tournament trying to catch these fish. And I had 2 or 3 fish pretty quick in the boat, lost the 4th one. And some of the things that I was doing, I was sight fishing with, this is a 7'4" heavy action, Team Lou's Magnum pitch and stick, 25-pound test, Gamma, copolymer. I had a 4/0 owner hook and a tungsten weight, and I was fishing some different baits. Just a lot of different things, just trying to see what shapes. A lot of times when I'm fishing for bedding fish, I'm trying to figure out what shapes they really, that really appeal to them. So I fished a crawfish. This is Strike King Baby Rage Craw and the Baby Menace Grub. I tried some natural colors, and I tried some bright white colors, as well as I fished a soft stick bait on an owner offset wide gap hook. I believe it's a 3/0, 14-pound test Gamma fluorocarbon, and I was throwing it on a Magnum Bass Rod 2, which is a 7'2" medium heavy action rod, and a Lou's Hyper Mag. So that was some of the things that I was doing first off in the morning. I did catch one on a bed on a pipsqueak poppin' perch. I saw it up there and tried to fish for it and didn't get it to go, so I circled back around, stayed off a distance, threw it over there, popped it over top of the bed. She couldn't handle it, caught her. About midday, I said, man, I'm not seeing the quality. I don't know if it's the cold night. Some of them backed off a little bit. I ran up the river. Went into an area, saw a good one on a bed, caught it after about 45 minutes. But I ran up the river, caught this one, was one of my better quality ones. Actually, it was probably my biggest one of the day, probably around 4. And I caught it, put it in the boat, and then I continued to go up the lake or up the river, and I was able to catch one on a bed with a Strike King game hog, and I used a 1/4 ounce Strike King tour grade tungsten weight and an owner rigging hook, 5/0 owner rigging hook with that setup, green pumpkin, blue sapphire, and then I'm just using 20-pound test, gamma fluorocarbon, 7'6", heavy action. This is their Magnum heavy cover rod. And again, for the reel, I was using the Lew's Hypermag. So caught some on beds, saw some fish, saw some bigger ones, and then I was just fishing around, kind of working my way back down the lake, and caught a fish around 3:30 that was clutch for me against, and that fish I didn't see, but I was flipping a laydown with the Strike King game hog. I popped it out of the limbs. He came up and ate it. That was pretty exciting, much needed. Day 1, I had 13, I believe, and it had me in 22nd. So I was pretty pleased with the day. Didn't lose any fish that really would have helped. Day 2, I felt like, well, don't fix what isn't broken, so let's start in the mid-lake, try to catch some fish before we go up the river and try to upgrade. I knew that it was going to take like 14 pounds a day based on day 1's weight just to get paid. The MLF Big 5 Pro Circuit, they pay the top 78, top 80, I believe, somewhere right in there, 78 or 80, roughly half the field. And to get paid after day 1, at that point, it was like 13 and change, almost 14 pounds. So I knew I was going to have to catch them again, and I had 16, 13, so I knew I was going to have a good day. But really, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about how do I increase my weight and get up into the top 10. Knowing there was still some really good ones on beds, I felt like I'm going to go stay in the mid-lake section, catch a few fish, catch a couple good ones, hopefully see a couple bigger ones on beds, and be able to have a good start and then run up the river later in the afternoon. My day 2 started out slow. It was like the fish that were on beds were extremely skittish. I was able to get bit pretty early, and unfortunately it was hooked just outside the mouth. I was staying off, and I pitched over a drop shot with a Strike King Z2 on it, and I felt tick, and it just loaded up, and I set the hook, and of course it was hooked on the outside of the mouth. But because I was actually fishing for a fish that was guarding a bed, and I could see it from time to time, and I could see the bed, and I was making a presentation to that fish doesn't count. It was hooked outside the mouth. So I put that fish back, and it was a long time before I caught another one. And I believe I caught one fish on a bed, and then somewhere around 11:30, still only one fish in the live well. I was starting to get pretty concerned with how my day was going. Things were not going well. So I felt like, well, in practice, I was able to catch some fish on a bed, on beds, with a drop shot. So I decided I'm gonna go ahead and pick up my drop shot. And yes, my drop shot is on a casting rod. This is a Lew's custom speed stick, 7 foot, and it's a 7'2", and it's a medium heavy. And it's a fast action, so it's got a really nice tip. And I've got this on 10-pound test gamma fluorocarbon. And why I fish the drop shot on a casting rod is because I can pitch it with more accuracy. And what I noticed is fish were on beds in and around stumps or logs and different things like that, and I could pitch it with pinpoint accuracy, a little bit more difficult with a spinning rod. So I went with that, and I'm actually using a Lew's Custom Light, smaller reel. I could palm it, and it's a real lightweight rod. I could pitch it in there, 10-pound test gamma fluorocarbon, and an owner cover shot 2-aught I had a finesse worm on there. And that's how I was able to start making some moves. Caught one pretty quick on a bed that really was staying there, and I tried pitching the traditional things in there, didn't really want it, pitched the drop shot in there, got him. Saw another one, pitched the drop shot on it, she was looking at it, really didn't bite it. So I went a little further, and then I picked up my wacky rig and pitched it in there and got that one. So now I've got 3. Things are looking up, and I decided I'd throw the drop shot around some spawning areas, not fish that I could see, just throwing them off the spawning areas. I caught my 4th and my 5th one, and then I decided let's go try to find some bigger fish. And it was about 12:30, things were looking up, headed the right direction. Ended up working 2 different fish, big fish, you know, like 4 pluses, that maybe even over 5. And I worked on one for a while. It was just really hard to catch, really hard to, it was just really what I call swimming. It wouldn't really set down on the bed, so that was just really difficult thing. So then I moved over to this other one that was on a bed, a male and a female, really showing interest, thought I was gonna catch it, had to stay way off or they would get real skittish. So stayed way off, made another presentation, got a bite, set the hook. It was like a 12-inch male. That would have been my 5th one, except it wasn't 14 inches or longer, had to throw it back. Then the female was really skittish, couldn't get it to set back up. I did catch another one that was like 2.5 pounds, and that made my 5th one, and I just started bebopping around, never upgraded the rest of the day. I caught some small ones, just really struggled for the day. I think I may have called one more time throughout the rest of the day. It just was a struggle. It was a tough day for me. I tried going back to some of the other areas that I fished the day before, and I even tried venturing into some newer areas that I hadn't fished in practice. Just didn't go well for me on day 2. Ended up with 914 to give me a total of 2611 for 2 days, and I fell 48 spots from 22nd to 70th, unfortunately. Fortunately, I got one of the last checks, and I was able to hang on to one of those checks, and that was kind of the consolation. As a competitor, really kind of disappointed with how the tournament went as far as day 2. Was really happy with day 1. If I was to look back and try something different, I think I would have swapped it up the river early on day 2 and then swapped it and came down and fished some of the clear water throughout the rest of the day. But that's hindsight's always 20/20. Really never really got to go up to some of the better quality fish areas up there in the river on day 2, and that really hurt my overall weight. But was happy to have a limit, happy to hang on to a check and get out of there, kind of salvage the day, mainly with that drop shot and leaning on some of that finesse type stuff. What I noticed was there was a lot of that flip-flopping. Guys would catch them one day, not the next, and guys that didn't catch them day 1 caught them better on day 2. So it was one of those tournaments that was hard to be consistent, but overall, you know, you can't be really upset when you get to take home a paycheck, and so I was thankful for that. But as a competitor, like I said, would have really liked to have had a much better day 2. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This is a little longer than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a quick recap, but that's how things went. That's how the event went. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell so you're notified anytime that I post a new video. And of course, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching, and until next time, good fishing.